So I'm Sheryl Utal. I am somebody who identifies as a wounded healer. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a finance and real estate background, but I've been in the wellness business for, I think, somewhere around 15 years. And I was inspired to make that transition because of the immense transformation that I experienced in my own evolution and my own healing journey in overcoming autoimmune disease and trauma. And through that process, having a spiritual awakening and recognizing that there are universal truths that a lot of people can benefit from learning about, and feeling called to share my experience to help others.
So the thesis for the Pulse Ox podcast came from a Stoic quote by Seneca that says, "Life is long if you know how to use it." And the Stoics are, you look at the readings of Marcus Aurelius, and the whole idea was underneath temperance, right, as this value concept that he emphasized his teaching around, was presence. Your ability to pick up the bag of hot Cheetos and open the bag of hot Cheetos and all of a sudden realize in that moment, like, oh, that's poison.
Yeah.
It hits you. You can feel it. In fact,
Yeah.
Have you ever done hot bay?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
So
I have like a nose. I have like a nose thing. Like never.
I think most
I've never snorted anything or like no nose thing. I'm not averse to like if they're intentional, but that's not one of my. Yeah.
Eight out of 10 would recommend. You could skip it, but
yeah,
was, right. I tried it and I started doing it as a semi-morning practice every so often, and I found myself yesterday craving nicotine because it's chopped up tobacco.
Yeah.
Mapacho tobacco. So I had that moment where I was like, oh man, I could like use a smoke. I felt that in me. And I was like, well, I'm not a smoker. Like, I don't do that. And just that awareness of the feeling, the propensity, the body signals, sending that to my brain to then direct me to, I was thinking like, oh yeah, I got to go to the gas station, like pick up a cigar or something. I had to erase it all of a sudden. And I think that most people are in kind of this Wetiko collective psychosis of human culture that they're just kind of desensitized to it. They're not paying attention, and it doesn't affect them enough to like shock them. And so it's kind of this slow decline until all of a sudden autoimmune disease, right? Or heart problems or, whatever it is.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, I'll always say like first sign of disease is betraying yourself. It's not the symptoms.
So how are you betraying yourself with your Hashimoto's? What did you uncover that was spiritually?
Oh my God. Well, like, I mean, I was diagnosed. I mean, I got that news 20 years ago. So I've been on this path a long time. So to some degree or another, it's like a movie I watched or a book I read or a dream I had, you know what I mean? It's so far removed from it at this time, but I did have a lot of capital T trauma. I also at 17 years old, was put on birth control pills, which is a disaster for female physiology, like an absolute disaster. And had been given a lot of antibiotics and was on a sad American diet. And I think that the combination of the dysfunctional, to put it lightly, early childhood experiences, along with the birth control and the damage to my gut from modern medicine, really created this incredible disconnect between my cognitive process and my body. It was just completely disconnected. And I was very analytical and judgmental and didn't know how to speak up for myself. So like in ancient systems, we talk about chakras, right? So if you think about Hashimoto's is a condition of the thyroid. So what is the thyroid, right? This is your, right? And so what is the throat, right? This is your center of self-expression. It's the bridge between your head and your heart, right? Arguably your head, even in your gut, right? Because it's got to go up, like the energy has to ascend. And so how did I betray myself was not for sure intentional. I was unconscious to the truth of myself. And part of this is, I think, to some degree, just the process of growing up, the process of self-discovery. And this was quite an initiation into an awakening of like learning how to not betray myself, learning what my truth is, what's a yes for me and what's a no for me, right? And learning the language of my body so that I could honor it, truly honor it, right? Like I grew up in a home where it was discouraged to express yourself.
Mm.
You know, children should be seen and not heard, kind of things that were said, right? So
Military, religious, what kind of home? Like, what was the dysfunction that generationally was caused that?
generationally Ashkenazi Jews
Mm.
that were extraordinarily anxious, extraordinarily judgmental, and of themselves and others. And I think that there's this like embedded program in a lot of Jews that they are afraid to be authentic because they couldn't be who they were because they were afraid to be persecuted.
Yeah.
They were afraid to be killed, right? Like you really couldn't be who you were. And I don't know that that was like that direct connection between like my parents' generation and their parents' generation. And I mean, like my mom's first generation American, right? Like my grandparents came on the boat through Ellis Island. And so there was a lot of always running away and running away from truth. And they didn't realize that that's what they were doing, but they were never fully grounded and present and confident in who they were. And that was a big learning for me. And you know, breaking that generational pattern and feeling completely honest and truthful and comfortable with who I am and in my skin, along with all the other shit that you have to deal with, like, you know, body image issues, and just everybody has to deal with some amount of confidence and embodiment stuff. We all have stuff, right? We all have judgments and things that we have to work through. I haven't walked in anybody else's shoes but my own, so I can't truly compare and say, well, mine was heavier, but it felt heavy, right? It felt, in my perspective, depths of deep layers that I had to uncover about authenticity, and things like boundaries and speaking my truth and knowing what is healthy for me and not healthy, and having that presence, like you talked about, of like, what am I reaching for and why? What's underneath why I'm reaching for this thing? How do I need, like, all that stuff had to be learned.
20 years of this journey. Have your parents changed their tune? I know folks get, as they get older, they get softer. They start to get a little bit more. They get softer. Have you seen a significant? Are they still around? You know, what's the situation with them?
My dad is alive, but not in the picture, and hasn't been for a very, very long time. But last I heard, he's alive, not doing well. But my mother, there's been a lot of growth that was going, kicking and screaming kind of growth, but we got there.
I've got you know, so it's been interesting, and got what a like, archetypal experience that 20, 30, and 40-year-old people have, where they start to look at their parents and decode why they are the way that they are.
Yeah, why am I the way that I am?
And it's
exactly.
It's so funny too, because like my mom was obsessed with family history. I was born and raised Mormon, and that comes with a whole.
I was gonna say, like, the Jew thing is like everybody has a thing.
Yeah,
like
Mormon thing.
Everybody. Yeah.
I think your Jew thing is heavier than my Mormon thing, but you know, we'll just call it aces. But
yeah, right.
Both my parents and my wife's parents have experienced recently significant crisis of self, and they're like
in the last chapter of their life ish.
My dad's 65, my mom is 61. Her parents are a little younger, they're in their 50s, but her mom specifically. And if Kim is listening to this, shout out to you, because you're the freaking best. And I've watched her now starting to come to herself, waking up and realizing, like, oh my God, like I didn't look out for myself. I put other people's interests ahead of me for 30 years. Why did I do that? You know,
shadows.
not that
they're the shadows, you know, we are not aware of.
We had another lady on here, Denise Wiesner. She talked about menopause making you feel invisible, and that was a great episode. But anyway, so we're watching them, and you hate to see it, but you love it. You love it because they're starting to ask us questions about even like work related stuff. What are you doing in your career? They see us doing pretty well and they want to know. But now they're really starting to dive into the spiritual side of things. And, I got to introduce my parents to mushrooms, and her parents aren't far away. I've almost cracked that code.
I got my mom to microdose, but
Yes.
she gave it up. She didn't
Okay.
stick with it, but at least she tried,
Hey, to each their own, You could take it,
Yeah.
you could leave it. But it's funny that like we had such an emphasis as Mormons on family history, right? Because they go to the temples and they do baptisms as proxy for their dead, right? So if someone never got to be baptized by someone having priesthood authority, right, you could do it. You could stand in for them and get them baptized so they go to super heaven or whatever. So we have like our whole family tree all mapped out. We've got like journals and all kinds of stuff stored and saved. My mom's been really diligent about it. But at no point have we ever sat down and been like, what did we learn from grandpa's like dysfunction?
Yeah.
Right. All of us have the bullet point lists of issues that we have with my dad's dad or my mom's dad, but we've never actually
What
sat
a
down.
powerful question. What a powerful question. And I don't think enough people even have a grid for that.
And what's great is that companies like Ancestry.com have mapped the last 10, or not 10, probably like 5 generations almost perfectly. And so if we apply some AI models to it, we could really come up with some amazing things that help us break cycles and get into a new world.
Building it.
I'm a big proponent of Zion. Building Zion, I think that that's a description of a type 1 civilization, right? Where we're masters at homeostasis with our planet and we're starting to, deflect asteroids and stuff like that. And I think that many Christians, I don't know if do Jews have the concept of Zion. Are they trying to build a super civilization and for Jesus to come? No, right? Or to welcome
I'm a bad Jew. I'm a bad Jew. Like, I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll have to do some research into that.
Yeah, we'll have to do it. I mean, there's some things that if you ask me about Judaism, I have answers, but I don't go very deep into it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to. I'd actually like to study Kabbalah. And I think that there's a lot of fascinating wisdom. I mean, if you even just go back and look at the codes in the words that were used, because the Hebrew language is numeric, just like Sanskrit, right? And so there's a lot of really fascinating things to discover inside of the Old Testament and all of the language that was used then. But I'm far from an expert on any of that.
I served a mission for my church, right? I did the 2-year name tag door knocking thing. It's actually where I met my wife in Kansas places. So I consider myself at least a brown belt at religion and spiritual practice. And so, it's interesting. You mentioned chakras earlier. There's a story on my YouTube channel where we talk about this experience I had. It was 6 months of nightly chakra meditation visions that I was able to have meditating on my root chakra of all places. And go and check it out. It's a really fascinating story.
I will.
But the awareness of chakras in general is one of the catalyzing events that led to me eventually leaving the Mormon church, because we were constantly given this script of this is the only truth. This is the truth. This is the one true church. They have the authority, etc. And then I started meditating on my chakras and had this profound experience. And I was like, no, you don't. I have a testimony that you do not. And so, on your spiritual journey, right? You're a bad Jew now, but you are a yoga teacher, spiritual person. You do personalized health reporting through Japa Health. Where are you spiritually? What is your divine connection? How do you get in touch with the mystical, magical sauce of this universe?
Through my breath. Yeah, that's to me the only true way to be in touch with the divine. I would also add nature, right? So through my connection to the natural world, the sun, the earth, the plants, all of it, right? The herbs, the dirt, the birds, everything, and my breath. And the presence of the connection is my religion, right? Like I resonate with what you said about each religion. I think for the most part is representing that is the absolute truth, and that is the absolute, way to God, right? Way to something bigger. And I don't agree with that, right? I think that there are beautiful elements of every religion, and we can learn from all of them, but they're all pretty much saying the same thing.
Mm.
And that just creates like a middleman between you and God. And I don't really feel the need for there to be a middleman and somebody else or some system to tell me the framework or the blueprint for what unconditional love is.
Is
That's something only I can feel. You know what I mean?
is there God? What is God?
Absolutely. Creation, source.
I-
It's
Is it
electricity.
Elohim? Is
It's
it Elohim?
electricity.
Yeah, is it Jesus, right? Like, is there? It's
No,
not.
it's no, it's electricity. God
The
and electricity are the same thing.
So like the DC current in my house, I plug in, I'm getting some God, or is it more of the metaphysical soup that's keeping everything together? The
Well, I
I
would say
mean
both to some degree, but mostly the latter. Yeah, it
the
is the
the former is a channeled version of it. It's a
yeah,
particularly dense version of it. So
yeah.
we've got it all wrong. Everybody's worshiping this person or this being or this entity or multiple
Who am I
entities.
to say it's wrong?
Yeah,
You know what I
I
mean?
guess so, right?
I totally get what you're saying. I think so, but I could be also wrong. I don't know.
Mm. I've felt the spirit as the Mormons describe it. Definitely. I know what it feels like. And everyone describes it as like burning in your bosom and like a clarity, right? Clarity of thought, and you feel the actual like elation in your chest. And what I've come to find out is that the feeling of the spirit is functionally replicatable. You can breathe your way into it. You can create the feeling in your chest and in your head and give yourself that clarity just through doing like Wim Hof breathing or the Silva meditation or transcendental meditation or take
Yeah,
your pick. They can all typically
yeah,
get you
yeah,
there.
yeah. There's many ways to get there. Yeah, yeah.
So then the question becomes, well, how do we get everybody to stop arguing and start breathing?
Just become it.
Embody it, like
Yeah. I
Gandhi.
mean,
My life is my message.
yeah, I mean, if we're talking metaphysically, then the more you can become it and embody it, that's broadcasting a signal to the universe, right? And so the more that you can amplify your signal, the more I can amplify my signal, the more everybody else can amplify their signal, the more other people can pick up on that and get curious about it and ask, what is it? Because that's interesting. What I see there, what I sense there, like we've all felt that calm, grounded, loving, non-judgmental presence from somebody that we're around. And we're like, just by being around that person, by being in the presence of their light and their energy is medicine for me. And
Mm,
it is something that causes me to raise my frequency, right? So I would say, I mean, number one, first and foremost, is just become it. Number two is tell your story
mm,
to as many people that you can, right? And be willing to be of service to the people that are interested. And if they haven't started on that journey of, like you said, asking that question about, well, what did we learn from grandpa's dysfunction? Or what
mm,
have I learned from my own pain? Why am I even in pain? What is pain? What is this
mm.
pain here to do or to teach me? If you can offer wisdom about how you navigated that experience within your own journey to others, and they can take a piece of what you say and a piece of what I say and a piece of what somebody else says, and they can start to formulate a process for themselves and then rinse and repeat. They start doing that to others. I believe that's the way we create the new earth, the world that we want to live in, break free from these systems that are so toxic, right? I mean, that's how I show up every day. That's what I feel my mission and my purpose is.
I love it. What is your secret to a long life?
My secret to a long life, trust God.
Mm. The atheists out there, ones
To the
who,
atheists out there, to the
for the
ones
ones
that they don't,
they don't acknowledge it, they don't
um,
buy into it. They say we're on a rock, we're monkeys, advanced Homo
yeah,
sapien.
I was there once.
Same.
Um, my secret to a long life for somebody who doesn't have a connection to source would be the opposite, right? The opposite is, what's the opposite of trusting God? The opposite of trusting God is worry, fear, right? Fear of the unknown, worrying that there's some inevitable doom, worrying that things aren't going to work out, feeling alone, unsupported. judgment of others, judgment of yourself, I would say find purpose. If you don't find God, find faith that everything's going to work out and purpose along the way. Because that's going to send a signal that, yeah, well, but if you think about it just physically, just biologically, the nervous system is designed to protect you from danger. Okay. And so this is very, very polyvagal theory. Okay. So anything in your environment, including your own thoughts, including the facial expressions and tone of voice of the people that you're around, right, will either send a signal of danger or a signal of safety to your nervous system. So the more that you can have faith that everything's going to work out, the more that you can quiet the voice of worry in your mind. What is worry? Worry is that, oh, there's some threat, there's some danger, right? There's something is unsafe. So the more that you can send a signal of safety to your nervous system, for me, that's trusting in God and all the other practices that I do, right? Which is like affirmations and my meditation and being present and the breath practice alone, because if you're unsafe, you're not able to breathe calmly, right? So the more that you can send a signal of safety to your nervous system, the less wear and tear, the less inflammation, the less damage is going to happen, the less compromised your gut is going to be, the less compromised your brain and your cognition are going to be, right? So it's about creating a safe feeling like everything is okay consciously.
I had never heard of the polyvagal theory. So, polyvagal theory is a collection of psychological, neuroscientific, and evolutionary ideas about the role of the vagus nerve in regulating emotions, fear responses, and social connections.
Yeah.
Stephen Porges introduced the
Dr.
theory.
Stephen Porges. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, he's
So,
got courses, he's got books, like his books are on Audible and he narrates them. You can go to the Polyvagal Institute, I think it's .org maybe, and just like sign up for his courses. Like anybody that's interested in personal development would benefit greatly from studying it. Yogis have known this for a very long time. This is part of the Ujjayi pranayama breath that we practice. This is like that constriction of the glottis muscles on the back of the throat that create that sort of oceanic audible breath when we breathe in and out the nose. This is part of that chakra energy system. This is part of the, the Kundalini understanding of how energy travels. But yeah, understanding that that vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, goes from the brain through the visceral organs down through the larynx, right? So the voice is part of this, and past the heart into the enteric nervous system in the gut, right? And so that tone, because energy, right? Like sending an electric signal, and the tonality of that nerve and the flow of energy through that nerve has been studied in depth. And you can actually detect the resilience based on your vagal tone and also based on your heart rate variability, right? So heart rate variability is highly connected to your vagal tone. And I teach a whole course on this, by the way. And so you can get an Aura ring or a Whoop or any device that has a biosensor that tracks your heart rate variability, which your heart rate variability is a measure of the variation between heartbeats. So different than heart rate. So heart rate is just how many beats in a given interval. So we usually know it as like every 60 seconds. We know how many times our heart is beating in that 60 seconds. And we usually associate that with some level of like interval training, right? Like on ones, O2, it's like, what's your max heart rate, right? Heart rate variability is what is the space between those beats. And a healthy heart is not a metronome. A healthy heart is highly variable, because that is indicative of resilience and your ability to adapt and bounce back. You want to be able to have that range and be able to bounce back. And then what you really, really want is for it to be a coherent wave, right? This resilient, coherent wave. And then if you want to amplify your longevity and you want to amplify that signal of safety that you're sending to your body, your nervous system, and your heart, is to create a state of heart brain coherence. So not only is your heart in this like smooth pattern of resilience, but it is entrained with the electrical activity in the brain. And there's a lot of beautiful research out of the Heart Math Institute in Northern California for, I think, going on 20 something years now, maybe a little bit longer. They also have trainings and courses. They have a little wearable device that clips onto your ear. It's called the M Wave, and an app so that you can practice breathing specifically in a way that helps to create this heart-brain coherence. So this can all be like very scientific and devoid of what we would call like God or the divine. But when you really start to get into it and you study the metaphysics of it, it's hard to deny, right? So I would say to atheists, go into polyvagal theory, go into psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, go into heart math, and really start asking yourself bigger questions about the energetics and apply it to your life. And it's proven, right? Heart rate variability is connected to all cause mortality. So you just improve your heart rate variability and start asking yourself about this electrical impulse in your body and what is this electricity?
I think that's the question that I typically challenge myself with is like, where do I draw the line between like magic and science, right? Between this religious question, being able to interact with the environment around us in a profound, energetic way that looks like miracles, right? Is ultimately just interacting with the environment in very specific ways. We could talk all day about it. I love it. Let's bring you on again. And where can everyone find you?
I'm on Instagram. My handle is my name, Sheryl_Utal. I also have a metaphysical quantum health company called Japa Health. And they can go to japa.health to take a virtual health assessment that I built. It's 150 questions and it assesses symptoms, behaviors, interests, and conditions. And it gives you a vitality score at the end, an overall vitality score. And then it scores the 10 different determinants of health and gives you suggestions to improve your vitality based on the intersection of science and spirituality. It's all scientifically validated. So you can go to japa.health to take the assessment. You can also find the Japa Health Instagram page, which is still in its infancy, but growing. And then I also have a personal website. It's sherylutal.com. I wrote a book. It's a workbook. It's a metaphysical workbook on shadow work and how to do the process of shadow work to discover the things that are holding you back that might be hidden in your unconscious.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This has been the Pulse Ox podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.